Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 mini-series with the Seattle Mariners. We are just past the trade deadline in the 2025 season. It's been a bit of a disappointing season for our Mariners. We won the AL West a year ago with 88 victories, and this offseason we added both Juan Soto and Gleyber Torres as free agents as our budget got a nice bump and we moved on from some contracts with players that we didn't see long-term futures in Seattle for. So the fact that we added those two big players and we're sitting here after the trade deadline with a 55-53 record, 10 games behind the Rangers, and in a flat-footed tie just out of the final wild card spot with three other teams, is not the way we wrote things up, but we made a few moves as we approached the trade deadline that I think should help us. None of them were truly earth-shattering, impactful moves. I guess with the recent earthquakes and eclipse coming up very shortly, I probably shouldn't be talking about earth-shattering moves. But I think they will help us ultimately steer this team back into the playoffs. The moves that we made: we added Lance McCullers Jr. from the Astros. He has not pitched well for the Astros this year and honestly has not pitched well in his first two starts with us. We added Michael Conforto, who will be playing a corner outfield spot for us against right-handed pitching. Felt like he was an upgrade over the number of players that we had tried in that role over the first 3.5, 4 months of the season. Also lets Soto slide into a DH spot against right-handed pitching. Maybe he'll do better just focusing on his hitting. The other two moves we made were even more minor, and we don't see them in our primary lineup. But we did bring Christian Bethancourt on to be our backup catcher and our starting catcher against left-handed pitching this year. We traded Christian Vasquez and another player for him. Vasquez and Bethancourt both in the final years of their contract. Vasquez was better defensively and did have that attractive captain personality, but Bethancourt is certainly a better hitter at this point in his career, so he should help upgrade our offense against left-handed pitching, just like the hope is that Conforto helps upgrade our offense against right-handed pitching. And last but not least, trade deadline day yesterday, we traded for Brennan Bernardino, left-handed pitcher who we think will help our bullpen. We're still just letting him sit out for another couple days before assigning him. He pitched only 2 days ago, so he's still a bit tired. And we are unfortunately waiting to hear what's going on with a potential injury to Brian Wu, who's 11-5 for us this year with a 4.55 ERA. But depending on what happens with his injury, we might just be able to slide Bernardino onto the roster if we need to put Wu on the IL. Otherwise, we'll probably have to make a somewhat difficult decision in our bullpen since our pitching has not been the problem this year. We're first in the American League in runs against. The issue has been scoring runs. We rank 8th in the American League, middle of the pack in runs scored. Even with Torres only being a little bit above league average offensively. And Soto has still put up a 122 WRC plus for us, so he's been a well above average player, but just not what we were expecting from Juan Soto. But even with those two players underperforming expectations and hopes, we still have improved in runs scored from a year ago where we were 11th. So the hope is that with the exception of Brian Wu, the team is relatively healthy. Nick Gordon is dealing with a sprained elbow that has a little impact on his throwing. He's a platoon player for us anyways. Hopefully he can play his way through that. So we're relatively healthy. We've made a few moves to improve the team, and now we need to guide the team back into the playoffs. The one thing that's going for us, last year on this date, we were 55-55 on August 1st. And as I mentioned, we ended up getting to 88 wins and winning the division with really strong Augusts and September. I'm not expecting things to be that easy this year, simply because last year the divisional race was much closer. Texas has really blown the division open over the last 5 weeks or so when we've been struggling and they've been playing very good baseball. So I think a wild card is probably the best case scenario for us this year, unfortunately. But as we sit here on August 1st, I am pretty confident we will end up in the playoffs when all is said and done, even though we're just on the outside looking in right now. And the news could have been worse on Brian Wu. Bone chips in his elbow. He's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks, so he should be set for most of the month of September to still be our number 5 starter. Could have certainly been a much worse situation, so all things considered, should have him back for the push for the playoffs, which will be very useful. If we're completely healthy otherwise, with Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby, and McCullers Jr., Wu would be in the bullpen for the playoffs anyways. I think I am going to give Matt Brash one final shot at trying to be a starter for us. This has been something that a few viewers have suggested. We did start him out in the rotation at the beginning of this year, and he was absolutely brutal. You can see he's got a 7.24 ERA as a starter for us, a 1.52 ERA as a reliever for us. I just kind of want to settle the question one way or another, whether it's something for us to think about. Love his 4-pitch arsenal, especially those first 3 pitches. The 35 stamina makes him kind of a 4 to 5 inning guy, which is not optimal. We tried putting him through a strength and conditioning program at the development lab over this past winter, and he was, I believe, our only unsuccessful development lab effort this winter. Weren't able to extend his stamina at all. I would feel if he was a 40 stamina, he'd be a lot more well-suited to be a 5-inning guy as a starter. But it is not to be the case so far. I don't think this is ultimately going to be successful, but like I said, give him another probably 4 or 5 starts over the next several weeks and find out one way or another whether that will work or not going forward. So we'll know whether to just keep him in a relief spot or not. And part of the reason I'm doing it is that we did just make this trade for Bernardino. And when I look at our pitching staff right now, there's not really anyone who's an obvious player to send down to AAA. And we do in Enright and Souza have 2 Rule 5 picks that have done pretty well for us as pitchers out of the bullpen this year that I want to maintain our rights to, so I don't want to send either of those guys back. In a perfect world, we probably would just promote Bryce Miller, who had been our number 5 starter until we made the trade for McCullers Jr. He's been fine in Tacoma, but he didn't do great in Seattle this year either. Would expect to see him back in September, and assuming that Brash is not pitching incredibly as a starter, he'll probably take the 5th spot in the rotation until Wu is ready. But we'll give Brash one last chance in the rotation here, and if this is as ugly as his first 4 starts this year, we'll know that going forward, we just need to be thinking about him in a prominent bullpen role. And we've split our first 2 games of the month with the Red Sox. Taking a look at the schedule, the only division rival we've got the entire month is 3 games at Oakland coming this upcoming week. Other than that, we've got a lot of games against other American League teams, with the exception of the Marlins, which is important because there is that crazy battle this year for the wild card spot. And you can see at this point there are now 7 teams within 1 game of one another for the 3 wild card spots. And Toronto, Houston, and the Angels are all kind of still lurking in contention as well. So those games are going to be very important towards positioning ourselves to hopefully ensure that at a minimum we get a wild card. And then in September, we do get some more AL West action, series against the Angels, at Houston, home against Houston, and then 3 big games against Texas at the end of the month. Would not expect that we'll be in contention for the division by then. Would love it if that was the case, because that likely means that we will have been playing much better, and Texas will have probably been playing much worse. But with an 11-game deficit here on August 4th, it's probably wishful thinking to believe that those games are going to be meaningful as far as the division. And we've taken 2 of our next 3 games. So we took the series against Boston, and we've got the rubber game against Oakland today. Hopefully we'll win that as well. As we sit here on August 7th, we're 11.5 behind in the division, but we are half a game up on the final wild card spot. So those wins against Boston were helpful. Unfortunately, we just got the one piece of news that really has the potential to make this dream of getting into the playoffs, and the fact that I said not that long ago that getting into the playoffs, we were going to achieve it, a little less realistic, and that's that J-Rod just suffered an injury. The defending American League MVP award winner, who looks poised to, or did look poised to lead the American League in batter war for a second straight year, going to be out for 5 weeks with elbow tendonitis. That obviously opens a huge hole in our lineup, and it obviously downgrades our defense in the outfield significantly. So we're going to have to get creative with a way to get through these next 5 weeks. Certainly not feeling as good about our chances here on August 7th as I was on August 1st, knowing that our best player is going to be out for the next 5 weeks. And to replace J-Rod, we brought Jonathan Clase back up to the majors. He was with us in the spring briefly, hit just .203, but did have 4 homers and 16 ribbies and 79 at-bats. He's done a good job in AAA Tacoma, hitting .293, 21 homers, 25 steals down there. Has excellent speed, is a good defensive outfielder. The bat is a far cry from what J-Rod had, but we'll see if we can muddle through over the next month and a half, missing the best player on our roster. And another week is in the books, and this month of August has literally been win-loss, 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 win-loss for the Mariners. We embarrassingly dropped a series to Oakland, which is always absolutely humiliating when that happens. We do have some important games, another one on the road in Baltimore. We've got Boston coming up, home series against Baltimore, Toronto, Minnesota and Cleveland. I can't remember where they are in the standings. They're way ahead of us, but, Minnesota's way ahead of us. Cleveland is in that battle with us for the wild card spot. Got a half-game lead on Cleveland for that final wild card spot at this point, so we remain right in the mix. At some point, we're going to need to play better than .500 baseball to put a stranglehold on that playoff position that we are planning on getting. And as I was complaining about needing to play better than .500 ball, we've done the exact opposite. We lost the series to Baltimore. We lost 2 out of 3 in Boston, and we've dropped one of the first 2 at home against Minnesota. So as we sit here on August 18th, we are 61-61. The definition of average, the definition of mediocre, and the definition of out of the playoffs if the season were to end today is we're 1 game behind the Guardians for that final wild card berth. And checking in on Matt Brash, he has predictably been awful as a starter, gone 3 3 1/3, and 3 2/3 innings, given his limited stamina, and allowed a combined 10 runs over those 3 starts for us. 2 of the 3 were losses. He took the L in a brutal performance against Oakland. And since Matt Brash has options and he sucks as a starter, I have demoted him to AAA for the next couple of weeks till we get to September call-ups when he'll be back. Can't stand to see him start another game for us. So we brought Bryce Miller back up to be our number 5 starter until Wu is back. I know that you Mariner fans are big fans of Matt Brash, and I know that many of you encouraged me to try him as a starter, which I've done now. And he's absolute trash as a starter, at least in OOTP. And that has sullied my opinion of him so much that we're dumping him into AAA. He definitely is a very good reliever. I'm kind of talking tongue-in-cheek about him, but right now I don't want him anywhere near my team until he gets his head set straight, working back in the bullpen down in Tacoma, and we'll have him back soon. There's just no obvious other players to really send down, and he has angered me with his brutal performance as a starting pitcher. And the season is dangerously spiraling out of control at this point, with J-Rod being injured and my George Steinbrennerous impetuousness around the likes of Matt Brash, but we lost 4 in a row. The rubber game of the series against Minnesota, and then 3 critical games at home against Baltimore. Finally stopped the slide with a win against Toronto yesterday, but we are 62-65, so below 500. We're still somehow in second place in the very weak AL West this year, but we're going to probably need to be playing well over 600 baseball the rest of the way to ensure ourselves a wild card spot. And that's not going to be easy to do without J-Rod. We're 2 games out of the final wild card spot at this point here on August 23rd. And we've righted the ship a bit, taking the first 3 games of the 4-game series in Toronto. So we've got 1 left in Toronto, 3 at Miami, and then 3 big games against the Guardians back at home before we get to September roster expansion. Taking a look at the injury situation, Wu only a week away. Unfortunately, Rodriguez still about 2 to 3 weeks away from being able to help us. And August ended up being just a brutal month for us. We dropped the 4th game in the series in Toronto, and then we dropped series to both the Marlins and at home against Cleveland. So 66-70 here on September 1st, which is a brutal record. We're still only 2 games out of the final wild card spot, so if we get healthy, we're certainly in the mix. Kind of a surprising stat after that crappy week, but Juan Soto has finally started hitting for us, and he just won the AL Player of the Week 500 average last week with 4 homers, 6 runs, and 8 ribbies. So he's finally rounding into form. Unfortunately, it's not inconceivable that it may be too little, too late. And as we do our September roster expansion, brought Tyler Wells back up to the team. He was briefly with us at the very start of the season in a rotation spot while we had George Kirby recovering from his injury, done a respectable job for us down in AAA. And then Brash is back as well. He was good in 5 relief appearances in Tacoma. He's got forearm soreness for a day right now, so we're not going to pitch him today, but he should be ready to go after that. And we've got him in a 6th inning setup role for us at this point. Hopefully he can help us do better. Position-wise, we did end up putting Nick Gordon onto the IL. He's been dealing with that sprained elbow for over a month now, just not getting better. The reason we were able to do that, we've brought up one of the top prospects in our system, Cole Young, number 15 prospect in baseball. Had some injury issues this year in AAA, played only 87 games, was basically a league average offensive player, but we're going to put him right into the lineup playing second base where Gordon was. And then also, at least for the near term, we brought up Tim Anderson to strengthen our infield as well. Good defensive player, still a productive bat, at least at the AAA level, where he hit 323, but think he could give us a nice veteran presence. And then with Gordon going on the IL, that let us bring up a fifth person, and Andrew McCutcheon, who we had put on the 60-day IL and was most recently doing a rehab assignment in Tacoma. Bring him back for that captain personality, and hopefully he can provide some leadership in the clubhouse on the rare occasions when he's actually in our starting lineup over this last month of the season. Wu should be back soon, at which point we will likely send Wells back down to AAA, and J-Rod still 1 to 2 weeks away. So the hope is that we're within a game or two of the wild card spot by the time J-Rod is getting ready to come back, and then we can finish the last couple weeks of the season really strong and get this team back into the postseason. And you may be wondering why I didn't mention Harry Ford as a call-up. He's banged up right now, dealing with a hip flexor strain, moderate impact on his running, unknown recovery time. Once he's healthy, we'll likely try to get him onto the roster. He had an excellent year in AAA, 149 WRC plus, hit 327, 15 homers, 81 ribbies. Clearly another one of the top prospects in baseball and another one of the top prospects in our system. So would love to have him back, but want to make sure that he's fully healthy. So we'll likely be shuffling some players on and off of this now 30-man roster over the month of September. But once Ford is healthy, certainly want to see what he can do in the show. And we've had a 3-3 start to the first week of the month of September, the final month of the season, and it's 69 and 73. We can't be having 500 weeks. It's getting to the point where time is running short, and we are now 2.5 games behind the Yankees for the final wild card spot. Also would need to jump over the Rays. So we've got to start stringing some wins together. We do have Brian Wu back, which is nice. Rodriguez's return, unfortunately, is unknown, and that has been a crippling blow to us. Andres Munoz also out with a sore ankle for another couple of days, which is not the best timing in the world to be missing our closer. And we've split our last 2 games, made a couple of roster moves. Nick Gordon finally healed up, being on the IL there, so we put Gordon back onto the roster and waived and DFA'd Tim Anderson, who refused to accept an assignment to... actually, we released Tim Anderson after he refused to accept an assignment back to AAA. And then we also brought Harry Ford up. He's healthy now. We're going to put him in as our starting catcher against left-handed pitching, see if maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle with him. Think he's a little better offensively than Bethancourt, and he's certainly better defensively at catcher than Bethancourt, so that should be a small positive, but I really like the catchers that we have on the team right now, and to make room for him, we sent down an extra pitcher. Bryce Miller ended up back in the minors. So we've only got 14 pitchers and 16 position players on the team right now, with the fact that we've got that injury to J-Rod. And we want to ensure that we get to see what the 2 top prospects in our organization can do over these final weeks of the season. Hopefully they can help us win about another 15 games. And we're going to need to be pretty close to perfect to win another 15 games. Yeah, 15-3 would get us to 85 wins, which probably gets us into the playoffs. Might even get there at 14 with the way the season's gone. It's possible 13-5 gets us there. But we've got quite a struggle to just get this team over 500, and we're going to be playing 14 days in a row now with no days off. Clearly, getting J-Rod back would be very helpful. We thought about sending Jonathan Clase down because he's hitting just a $178, but we just really don't have another guy capable of playing respectable defense in center field for us. So we're going to continue to try to live with him and just really hope that we see J-Rod again soon. And we've split 4 games since we last checked in, so 72 and 76 is not going to get it done. The good news is that J-Rod is healthy, so we are going to thank Jonathan Clase for a job done, send him back to AAA Tacoma, get J-Rod back into the starting center field position in the middle of the lineup, and hope that we can win double-digit games over these last 2 weeks of the season. Taking a look at the standings, we're now 3.5 behind the Yankees for that final wild card spot. At this point, with the Royals being 6 back, it's really just the Yankees, the Rays, and our Mariners competing for that last playoff spot. Amazingly, with how bad the second half has been, we're still second place in this brutal AL West. At Houston, at Colorado, home against Houston, home against Texas, and then we finish with 3 in the Windy City against the White Sox. So 14 games to go, and we probably need to be 11-3 at a minimum to get into the playoffs. It's time for a hot streak, guys. And it was a slightly better week than we've been having, with a 4-3 record. And at this point, we've won 4 of our last 5 against Houston and Colorado. But it's probably too little too late. 7 games left in the season. It's 76 and 79. We probably want to be perfect to get into the playoffs. Probably need to be perfect the rest of the way to get into the playoffs. We're 2 games behind the Rays now for that final wild card spot. The Yankees 1 out at this point, so the Rays are barely over 500. If we run the table, I think we probably do get a playoff berth, but the way this team has played all year long, it's been win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 2, win 1 all year long. It's hard to see winning 7 in a row when the stakes are highest as far as our playoff lives. And we did just get a 2-1 win against Houston, 3rd straight win in the series, second straight 1-run victory. Brian Wu with a really nice performance for us. 3 hits, 3 walks, 1 earned run over 6 innings. Runs his record to 13-7. Probably going to need to have him run the record to 14-7 in 5 days to ensure that we have any shot at the playoffs. We're 1 back now, tied with the Yankees, just a game behind the Rays after both the Rays and the Yankees lost yesterday. So it's not impossible, but we've got the real tough job ahead of us right now with Texas. They've got the best record in the American League. They still have not quite clinched home field advantage throughout the American League playoffs, and they still have a chance at getting past Milwaukee, the Cubs, and the Dodgers for the best record in baseball and potential home field advantage in a World Series against those teams. So they've still got a lot to play for, and they are an excellent team. After them, we will have the White Sox. It's 65 and 92. That's certainly an easier task for us, but whether those games against the White Sox will even matter will be determined by how we do in the final 3 home games of the regular season against the mighty Rangers. And we did get a 3rd consecutive 1-run victory, so we're trying to make it interesting. 4 runs in the bottom of the ninth to come back from a 5-1 deficit. So maybe that is a sign that this is a team of destiny. I'm hoping we're up to 78 and 79. So if we win these next 2, we're back to a winning record. Taking a look at the wild card standings, the Yankees and our Mariners both won yesterday. Tampa was off, so 3 teams separated by half a game for that final wild card spot. Move forward another day. Come on, computer. You can do this. That's what I get for trying to show you live action, show you how slow my computer has become. Maybe the whole thing's just going to crash out on me. And this nightmare season with Seattle did not actually exist. Nope, it does exist, and we did get a win against Texas, 4-1. So the pitching's been good. Still a half game behind Tampa, as Tampa, the Yankees, and our Mariners are all winning now. We've got 5 wins in a row. If we can get this win today against Texas, the White Sox are not playing for anything. We got a shot. And unfortunately, we lose the game. Lance McCullers Jr. out with forearm tendonitis. So if we're lucky enough to get in the playoffs, he'll be missing a start. But certainly that loss is going to hurt our chances for the playoffs. We're at the point where we really need to be perfect. Yeah, that bounces us a game and a half behind Tampa and a game behind the Yankees with just 3 to go. So we are certainly up against it now. And as we get ready for these final 3 games of the season, we're set up well as we could be with our rotation. It's going to be Castillo, Gilbert, and Kirby, our 1, 2, and 3 starters, going these next 3 games. We've got to win them all just to have a winning season. And taking a look at the standings now, we're 2 games back as Tampa Bay's gotten hot. So whether or not we make the playoffs is unfortunately out of our control. If we lose a game, it's probably all over. If we lose 2 games, it's mathematically all over. And probably have to be perfect. And those of you who have been watching this team all season long know that it is far from perfect. We just lost 1-0. So the best we can do is 500. The Yankees and the Rays are tied for the wild card spot right now. So we've got to go 2-0. They've both got to go 0-2. And then we'd go to tiebreakers, which I'm guessing probably aren't even in our favor. So we're probably already technically eliminated. 1-0 loss. Luis Robert Jr. with a run-scoring single. So Castillo gave us a nice outing. A great outing, actually. 4 hits, 1 walk, no earned runs over 7. Spire, who's done a nice job for us this year, gave up the big hit. And that is probably all she wrote. I'm pretty confident the proverbial fat lady is singing at this point. They don't have us marked off officially eliminated from the playoffs yet. But again, unless we have winning records against both Tampa and New York, I believe we are technically done. Taking a look at the team-by-team standings. And we are 2-5 against the Yankees. And we are 2-5 against Tampa. So we are done. We'll play out these last couple of games. Would love to at least get to 500 to feel like this season was not a complete waste, but it's definitely feeling that way right now after all of the enthusiasm of adding Soto and Torres in free agency. Thought that the offense would definitely be much improved. Take a look here as we head into these final couple games of the season at team statistics. And we've slipped back to 12th in runs scored. So we are a worse offensive team this year with Soto and Torres than we were a year ago when we didn't have either of those players. Still the best pitching staff in the American League, first in the AL, 670 runs allowed. We have gotten a bit unlucky. That 79 and 81 record should be 83 and 77 right now, driven by our excellent pitching staff, I am sure. But it doesn't matter. What the numbers say you should be is not nearly as relevant as to what your record says you are. And just a rough summer for us in July and August. We have played a bit better here in September, but not good enough. After April, the team was very mediocre all year long after that, and eventually we ran out of games. And we did win the penultimate game of the year against the White Sox, but as expected, we are officially eliminated at this point. One game left to go. Another victory, of course. Logan Gilbert leads the league in wins. We do get the team to 500, but it was definitely not the season that we were hoping or the season that we were expecting. When all was said and done, both the Mariners and the Yankees were one game out of that final wild card spot, which goes to those pesky Tampa Bay Rays. Looking at the league leaders, J-Rod dropped off all the charts with that late injury. Logan Gilbert, as we just talked about, led the league with 16 wins a year after going 8-8 and having a great WAR. He goes 16-12, but Luis Castillo, who's second in the league in pitcher WAR, is the leader by the advanced metrics, and interestingly, he goes 10-10 this year when he was second in the league in WAR a year after Gilbert went 8-8 but led the league in pitcher WAR. So interesting, shows that pitcher wins can be a misleading statistic. The one thing that's not a misleading statistic is team wins, and the team wins tell us that after feeling real optimistic about this team a year ago, winning the AL West, we have come up far short this year. We were as average can be at 81-81. We'll do a full debrief in our next episode. Clearly, we'll be moving on from Paul Goldschmidt, who had a rough year for us. We're going to have some other interesting decisions to make, too. Should we bring J.P. Crawford back? And our budget situation is going to be interesting as well. If we can kind of maintain this budget, we've got fair financial flexibility and good investments in scouting and player development. But if we get cut back, it's going to make things even more challenging this offseason. We did end up making some money this year, which is positive. But our owner goals, not necessarily great. Wanted us to be in the playoffs. We were 500. We did extend George Kirby. Wanted us to acquire a power hitter, and apparently Juan Soto does not qualify there, so that's very disappointing. So it'll be interesting to see how our review goes with our owner. And we'll find out about that review, and we'll talk through our roster and what our plans are for next season in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and bearing with this very mediocre product that we put on the field this year. Until our next episode, hope you have a great day.